Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Web Applications. I'm extremely excited today to talk to my guest. And I've had a few guests on. If you guys have heard my podcast in the past, it's primarily me just speaking into a microphone about the lifestyle, life and times, I guess, of JWeb as I'm building Follow-Up Fuel. And then also on Mondays, we do Mindset Monday. And on Wednesday, we do Walk Away Wednesday. My guest here, I'm not going to say his name yet, but my guest here today will be, frankly, seems to be fantastic for both those days. I'm going to publish it. I'm publishing it on a Wednesday for Walk Away Wednesday because I feel like he just embodies what we're all striving to do and striving to be. Not only that, but just the businesses that he's built allow us and enable us to get to where he is, right? To be that person that we strive to be. All right. So without any further ado, I'm introducing you to Daven Michaels. And I'm just like I was telling him before I hit record that I wasn't going to read from his bio page or his about us or anything like that, only because I just wanted to tell you, from my heart and just why I want to have him on and just the feeling that I get from him. So a couple of things. I first came across one of his companies. He's had many, but one of his companies by the name of 123 Employee many, many years ago. And you guys have probably heard me talk about 123 Employee. That's the name of his company, and how I had at one time, I think I had like 7 or 8 virtual assistants from 123 Employee. But the reason why I chose them to begin with, and I think this is to his credit, is that I had evaluated and looked at a lot of virtual assistant companies in the past, but 123 Employee was the only company that consistently followed up with me in a strategic way, right? Like I somehow got on their email list. I didn't purchase their virtual assistant services right away, but they stayed on me, right? They kept following up with me in a professional, strategic way. And so when I was finally ready to make a decision, there was no decision to be made, frankly, because I think all the other ones went away. And I chose his company, 123 Employee. And I can tell you, I've recommended them, I don't even know how many times, but I can tell you that just the professionalism and class and just the whole operation, from the fact that they have account managers and the people that are actually doing the task, and then somebody's, let's say, absent or something like that, there's somebody else that can back it up. It's just like a really tightly run operation. All right. And before I get him on here, one other thing I want to say is that I had an opportunity. This is almost serendipitously. I don't know if Daven, you remember this, but when we met, it was I just landed at the airport, and you happened to be in the cab. I think we weren't in Uber, which is pretty funny, which is over 5 or 6 years ago, but or 4 or 5 years ago. But we were in a taxi on the way to the hotel, and I remember heard somebody saying, and we were sitting in the front seat next to the driver, and I was like, "That's Daven Michaels." I'm like, "Holy crap, that's Daven Michaels!" Like, I can't believe I'm in a taxi with Daven Michaels, and then we, waiting in the lobby together and the whole 9 yards. So it was just really cool that I was able to meet you, and I was happy to do a testimonial video for you. So I'll just say, guys, that I have Daven Michaels, global entrepreneur, and thank you, Daven, for joining Web Applications today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I, too, agree, Jason, that it was serendipitous and everything happens for a reason. And we had a great time. It was a fun time at Raleigh.
Yeah, for sure. So where I want to start today, and there's so many different places I want to go with you, but where I want to start today is, and this is one thing that I was getting from your page, it's just sort of, and I know this about you, but just the lifestyle that that business, I'll just say, that business has enabled you. Talk to me about that. Like, talk to me about what your life is like in terms of, and you can give me the work stuff, the balance stuff, the fun stuff. Just give it to me all, as far as what your life is like being Daven Michaels.
Now, before I do that, I got to ask you, are you a bowler?
You see, like those.
You're a championship bowler, aren't you?
You know that. You know what's funny is that but those are from my childhood. In all candor, right? That's my first sport. I was like 8, 9 years old. And so I brought those out recently because I was at my mother's house, who doesn't live too far away, and she just had them stored away. But I also wanted to show my children, who are 6 and 4 now, that there's trophies to this, right? In other words, that they should go out and earn. And I did have one trophy recently over the last year, which was a trophy that I was most proud of, which was for volunteering and raising money for a local organization for people. So that one of those trophies is back there too. And that's how the whole trophy conversation got started, actually. It's like Daddy is helping people. So yeah.
That's really cool. They caught my eye because my dad was in the 300 club. He wasn't a pro bowler, but
right.
He competed. And remember when I was little, we would go to the bowling alleys and watch him compete. It was really cool. He's been gone for a long time, but he was my greatest hero. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Love
so
that.
yeah, so my lifestyle is beyond awesome. Now, before I let me preface that. So, I started my business, Jason, when I was 15, and I've been self-employed for over 3 decades now, a long time.
Mm.
And when I started my business, I had no resources, I had no money, I had no capital, I had no education, I had nothing. And it was hard. It was hard, 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 hard. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But at the time, even in my mid-20s, I had never really been outside the US. Today, I'm a global entrepreneur. I live all over the world. And the cool thing is I get paid to do it. And what happened was, honestly, I may not be the quickest study, because the first 20 years of my business, I was grinding. Now, I had some early success, which was good, and so it wasn't as hard anymore, which was awesome, but I was still grinding. And then it was really the last decade that I really got leverage in my business. I figured out, I got into the outsourcing business. That is my business, and I outsource and process out everything in my life. And now today I only work on what I'm wildly passionate about. There's kind of this stigma of me that I'm kind of like a Tim Ferriss, like a 4-hour work week kind of guy. The reality is, nothing could be further from the point. I actually work a lot, but I only work on what I'm passionate about. I have everybody else in my life that does everything for me. My life is totally mobile. I'm at our Puerto Rico house today. Tomorrow I'll be in our Vegas house. And I spend a lot of time just traveling the globe. And we're actually going to get rid of the Vegas place. And then we're going to spend 6 months a year traveling, and 6 months a year, well, probably a little longer than that, here in Puerto Rico. Yeah, I literally can't believe I get paid to do what I do. I would do it for free, but thankfully I do get paid. But again, it was a very conscious decision, and I took a very systematic approach to it. After 20 years of being in business, I was like, okay, yeah, I made some money, and life is good, but what do I really want? Like, if somebody told me I had cancer, I wouldn't say I want to go work another 3 months before I die, right? It would be the regrets of not doing what I want to do. So literally, I feel like if somebody told me today, hey, you're going to die in 6 months, I'd be like, that sucks, but God, it's been a great life, and now I teach people how to do that. And there's a lot of people that want to know how to do that. I think we're probably going to talk about VIA, which is a byproduct of that. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to start there, guys, because this is why you should listen to him, frankly. And I don't say that for all of the accoutrements and all of the physical things that come with it, but you can hear in his voice the passion, enthusiasm, and just sort of overall satisfaction, right, with his life, right? And that's to me is important, well beyond a Ferrari or a big house or anything like that. It's about living the lifestyle that you design, and that you're passionate about doing those things. And you talk about sort of not being that you do still work hard, but you're working on things that you're passionate about. And I think that's really the ultimate goal, is to find something you love to do so you never work a day in your life, right? That old adage.
Yeah, it's really about having a business or a lifestyle that you design, rather than a life that your business sort of dictates for you, right? And
Yes.
so many entrepreneurs, they leave corporate America or their job or whatever, they start a business, and they end up being 80 hours a week for far less than they were making when they had a job, and they're bound to their desk. And when people get into business for themselves, they're in business, for the money, the lifestyle, the things that business affords them. So I'm all about showing them.
I'm going to let my natural curiosity sort of guide this interview. So I hope you don't mind that I'm going to be sort of going back and then forward again. But a couple of things.
Yeah.
You said that over the last 10 years is really the thing where you sort of put it all together and figured it out. Before that, I know you had a couple of other businesses, one being a telecom business. I think it was a telecom business, right? That you had sold, right? And you said that you were grinding up until that point. What does that mean to be grinding in your world? I know what it means in my world, and everybody that's listening understands what it means in our world, but not a lot of us grind and then have a company, get sold the way you had and have, this.
Yeah. I don't usually talk much about the telecom because it's so long ago. And that's a really great question. So let me just break it down for you a little bit.
Yeah.
So I started my first company. I was designing clothing for music groups, and this was in the early 80s. And I had no idea what the heck I was doing. Most of my bands were playing their garage, so they certainly didn't have any money. But I did get lucky. So MTV came on the air, changed the face of music, changed our lives. So I was working with these bands that had nothing going on. Within about 90 days, most of my bands had record deals. Within a year, they were selling millions of albums, and we rode that wave. And I found, myself working with some of the biggest bands of the 80s and 90s: Prince, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Thompson Twins, and that was a big bump. From there, I was intrigued with the concept of residual income. Today, that's not like anything special. Everybody has businesses that generate residual income, but back then that was like intriguing to me, like the concept of that. And remember, these were the early days of, or actually this was pre-internet. So residual income wasn't that, that easily obtained. So I got into a total brick and mortar business, something totally different. And I got into the voicemail business, actually. I was selling voicemail, standalone voicemail. And I was way too early. So, when it comes to pioneers, they always say you can always tell the pioneers because they're the ones with the arrows in their back. And that was certainly me. So we were trying to explain to people what voicemail was, and people couldn't grasp it. It was a little too early. So we pivoted before they had the term pivoting. We pivoted, which sounds so much better than screwed up and created a new approach. And I got into the paging business, and we actually bought a paging signal and grew that. And I'll share with you what grinding is here. Okay, so it was a 5-year grind. I had about 10 employees, and we worked really hard. So hard that when I ran out of marketing dollars, what I would do is every night, myself and a couple of our people, we would go out and we'd put flyers on cars all night long, and then we'd be back in the morning to pick up the phones when the phone rang. Okay, that was a grind. Okay.
Wow.
And we did it. And then 5 years later, we were in 60 cities across the US. I sold to a public company. And when I sold to that company, to make that deal happen, and it's a longer story than we have today, but it was a fun story. But to make a long story short, I had an asking price, and I wasn't going to budge on that price. And it was more money than they were willing to pay. So I said, hey, look, why don't you pay me some cash, give me a note, and give me stock in the company. And for them, that was a paper deal. That was not a big deal for them. It was like buy now, pay later, sort of, right? And so we did the deal, and it was a calculated risk. At the time, that business was consolidating. Big multinational companies were consolidating. There were only 2 public companies that were left that hadn't been consolidated, and I felt that they would get bought out. And also, we had been courting them as a buyer for about a year, and nothing was really happening. And then one day they just wanted to close the deal. And I thought, well, something must be cooking. I thought there was a deal on the table, and it was. So a year and a half later, that company, half the company got bought out. My stock tripled, and that moment in time changed my entire life. So it was a big grind, and then luck. I always say, if you meet most entrepreneurs who are very fortunate, you'll say, you're really lucky. And many of them will say, well, luck had nothing to do with it, right? Or they'll say, well, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. And that is absolutely true, right? You have to pay your dues for sure. Yeah. But I believe if anybody has any level of success, they also have luck. They just have some good luck. I mean, look, things just happen, right? And so I've had the good fortune of having both of those lucks, right? Being prepared, but also just being dang lucky. So,
can you say what you sold it for? How much?
Probably shouldn't say that, but it was a decent chunk of change. It wasn't like earth-shattering. For me, it was earth-shattering. But then when that figure tripled, then that was some pretty life-changing money. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You mentioned that that was my homage to Andrew Warner, by the way, from Mixergy. I don't know if you know that podcast, but I've been listening to him for years, and he always tries to get that answer from people. So.
Number. I mean, it was 6 figures that became 7 figures.
Right. Okay. So getting back to when you said that you figured it, you finally figured it out. Tell me, what was the transition, I guess, that sort of brought you to from the grind, aside from the money, from the grind to sort of the process of, okay, this is how business should be built?
Yeah, it was really a confluence of a lot of things. And maybe a better way to frame this might be my business. So my company that I've had for over a decade is 123 Employee. As you said, in the outsourcing business, we have about 550 employees in our 3 centers in the Philippines. And there's been several tipping points in my business, and then I'll kind of explain how this all ties together. Sure. Several tipping points in the business. So the first one was when Tim Ferriss's book came out, 4 Hour Work Week, right? Which is a game-changing book. But for us as a company, it was really game-changing, and I'll tell you why. We were a U.S. company. And at the time, we were brand new to outsourcing. We were literally the first company to come out with outsourcing for entrepreneurs. And so we were a US company. At the time, the sentiment, it was considered very anti-American to outsource. So all day long, we would get FU calls. We'd pick up the phone, good afternoon, 1, 2, 3, and play, FU, 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 get emails like that too. So what happened was it was an obstacle for us. When Tim Ferriss's book came out, the call stopped, which was awesome. And that allowed us to continue in our process. Now, we were also very early on in the business. And remember, I say you can always tell the pioneers because they're the ones with the arrows in their back. And that was us initially, because initially entrepreneurs needed outsourcing, but they didn't want outsourcing because they didn't understand it. And you've got to fill a want, not a need, right? And so we realized very early on that if we wanted to have a market, we would have to carve out that market some way. And we decided to take an educational approach. So I started writing books, eventually became a New York Times bestseller, started creating info products, started speaking on stages, and started doing events of our own. And we began educating our prospects and turning them into clients. And we still use that edutational model today. Actually, it's not even an educational model now. We call it edutainment. That's what we do. We try to edutain, as I was showing you a video earlier today, right? And so we still use that model today. So those were a couple of shifts in our business, right? Another shift in our business, a tipping point in our business, is when we went from marketing to one to marketing to many. And today, I only market to many. I don't even market to one, whereas most people just market to one. They get on the phone, they sell somebody something. Anytime I open my mouth, I'm speaking to many. When I write a book, this next book will sell 100,000 copies. 100,000 people will take that one message that I sent, right? You and I are doing an interview right now. I'm not talking to one, I'm talking to your audience, right? We do webinars. I speak on stages. We do events of our own. Every time I open my mouth, it's to many. And that's how you grow your business exponentially, right? It's not one-to-one, it's one-to-many. And then probably the last tipping point in my business, which will answer your question, a long answer to your question, is I love people outsourcing. I love to help people outsourcing because I know it's the first step in them getting leverage in their business. The next step is they're going to start making more money because now they can actually scale their company, right? Because if you have leverage in your business, you have help, you can scale as opposed to focus on the minutiae like so many entrepreneurs do. And then the next step for you is you start hiring C-levels. And when you start hiring C-levels, you're hiring people that are like you, people that can take your business to the next level like you originally took your business to the next level. And that's when my business really exploded. So it was really kind of when I brought on my VP, Bijal. Bijal was my systems guy. He's my process guy. He's better than processes and systems than I am. I'm good at utilizing those systems and making them work. And so together we're really a dynamic duo. And he really began all of those processes and the leveraging in our business and getting this all worked out. And now today that's what we teach and that's what we live also.
How did you know that it was that you should stop doing one-to-one and doing one-to-many? Was it something that you learned through education or trial and error? What was it exactly?
I did, yeah. So I saw people speaking and I thought, gosh, speaking would be a good idea for us at 123. I was like, I want to do that. And 95% of people don't want to speak, right? But I definitely want to do that. And so I initially got out there, did some speaking, fell on my ass. And realized that I had to get some training, just like anything else. So I really have invested in my craft as a speaker, and as a result, my phone rings off the hook, which is again very blessed, but certainly by design. So this is kind of cool and very humbling. So almost a decade ago, I started speaking about 8 years ago, and an event that I completely bombed out at and fell on my ass was this. It was the first time I was allowed on a big stage. So a friend of mine, Mike Lathrop, put me on a stage with 500 people. And the reason he did was because he asked me, or I asked him, I wanted to be of service. I knew he wasn't going to put me on the stage. I wasn't an accomplished speaker. I said, how can I help you with your event? He goes, well, can you help me get some butts and seats? Can you sell some tickets for me? I go, yeah, I can do that. So I did. I went out there, sold a bunch of tickets for him. He calls me one day. He said, Daven, he says, listen, he says, I have big speakers speaking for me. Nobody sold a dang ticket for me. You've sold a ton of tickets for me. I'm going to put you on my stage. I was like, wow, this is great. So I ended up going on stage. Before me is Mark Victor Hansen, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Mhm.
Marshall Silver, who's arguably the greatest stage hypnotist of our generation. Adam Ginsberg, who's, I won't say what he is, but he is still an exceptional closer, or at least he's exceptional in crafting an offer, whether it be legitimate or not. Did I just say that? And then who else? And Les Brown, who's one of the most masterful speakers on the planet and one of my very best friends. And then me, right? And I remember sitting in the audience before it was my turn, marveling at those incredibly accomplished speakers, the highest top of their pinnacle. And I thought to myself, I said, if I could just one day be 10% as good as those guys, I'll be happy. Okay. And today I'm in their league. And so much so that I just announced maybe 2 weeks ago that I was going to be back in the States for 4 months. And my phone just rang off the hook. I've already booked, I think, 11 speaking gigs, which is actually more than I really want to have. But and more will come in during those 4 months too. And that's because I'm a selling speaker, and I'm really good at what I do because I invested in my craft, and that's why the phone rings. So
Somebody hearing this might say, "Oh, okay, so that's what I'll do. I'll just go and start speaking," right?
It's a great idea. It's changed my life. Because one last thing here too, Jason, remember that's how I get paid to travel and see the world. Like, and just that in perspective. Hang on, I'm gonna pull up my travel schedule. I'll tell you what we just. So when I announced that I was getting booked, here's where I'm going to be. So first I'm in Lake Elsinore, California. I've never been to Lake Elsinore. Then I've got two events in Vegas, and then I'll be in Phoenix, and then Alberta, Canada, 2 different locations over there, and then Orlando, London, Tampa. Amazing. I have a tentative for Goa, India, and then Nigeria. It'll be my second speaking gig in Nigeria. So, this is just, I can't, I literally pinch myself every day. I can't believe I get paid to travel. And I love it. And all I want to do with the rest of my life is travel. And if I can afford it, that's good too. So
I'm smiling and laughing a little bit here because I could see myself doing that as well. And it's something I've never even thought of literally until this moment. So that's just very interesting, especially on Walk Away Wednesday. But my question is this: if I'm someone who's listening to this, and just to even say it's me, right? And I've got follow-up fuel, and I started my podcast, and I want to start creating these platforms to get known and to sort of pre-frame my offer, whatever it might be. A lot of people are struggling with, or would struggle with, well, let's say, for instance, you invite me on stage. What am I going to talk about? How am I'm not an authority on this the way Daven Michaels is within that. How did you get over that? Or what did you talk about?
Training.
Yeah.
In the early days, I had no idea what I was doing. So I seeked out the masters, and I paid, you had to pay for access, and I learned. And that's how I made it happen. I invested in my craft. You have to invest in your craft.
Right. That is fantastic. That's good. It's a great way to combine that lifestyle that you talked about earlier and get paid. And I didn't necessarily make the connection until right when you said that, for sure. So let's say, for instance, you're someone here, let's say they're sitting at their desk listening to this, or they're on the way to work, frankly, listening to this, like that guy in the video that you showed me a little bit earlier. And actually, you know what? I'll actually frame this question this way. And you sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I'll just come back to it. Let's say, for instance, you've lost everything.
Yeah.
Your name, your contacts. The only thing you had is access to the internet, and that was at the cyber cafe or the library.
Yeah.
Right. What would you do? What are the first steps you would take? Those small steps, right? And I want to try to break it down, in a micro way, because sometimes, I can't listen to interviews that Steve Jobs did, or Bill Gates, or Warren Buffett, people like that, or Mark Zuckerberg, that are just so far, I think, feel intellectually ahead of me and all this other stuff that just can't get there. And for you, some people listening to you, the same thing, right? All the success that you've had, global entrepreneur, they're just trying to leave their job and start something on the side, right, for the next year before they even walk away. If you were in that same position today, what are the steps that you would take that are practical that someone can follow?
Sure. I probably take one of two routes. If I really had lost everything and I was bankrupt and I had nothing and I'm sitting in a coffee shop, I'd
Mm.
probably do a network marketing opportunity. I mean, really,
Yep.
look, a network marketing opportunity is a business in a box, right?
Mm.
I'm not a huge MLM fan. I have had some wins though in MLM, a couple of them
Mm.
that were pretty incredible. So I cannot slam MLMs. But if you have nothing, they already have the structure. There's a business in a box, and you just have to go out there and share the opportunity. Just shout it out to everybody that will listen. I mean, that's beyond a lot of people's comfort zone. But I would think if you're broke, destitute, lost everything, you have nothing, that's exactly what I would do. If I was just absolutely, there's no way I'm ever going to do an MLM. Second option,
Mm.
I'd probably do what I was talking to you about earlier. So I would get into internet marketing, and the leverage that I would need would probably be a list. So I'd get out there and do some solo buys. In other words, you're buying some media traffic, and then you build a list that way. Or something that we were just talking about that I haven't even thought of. There are platforms like JVZoo, Warrior Plus, ClickBank, and the list goes on, maybe about 10 of them, that if you just have an incredibly appealing offer that you've split tested every which way and it converts high and the presentation is strong, and you spend a few bucks maybe advertising it to those to the members of that platform, then you can have instant lists. Yeah, we have an offer that we're putting on a platform that's coming up that you know about, and it's a new platform we never used before. The CEO of the company is an old friend of mine. We've been friends for almost a decade. And for years, we travel together every year. We go on a cruise together somewhere in the world. And we always talk about, we should do something together. We should do something. Every year we should do something. I said, Mike, this year we're going to do something. I said, we're going to put our next launch out on your platform. And we are. And the cool thing is, we haven't even launched yet. And we have about 660 or 50 affiliates, and I think I recruited 6 of them. The rest came from that platform. So if you didn't have anything going on, you could build something, you could put it on one of these platforms, and if it was good, if it was solid, if it wasn't weak, then you could build a base overnight.
I'm going to ask this question, and if you see me duck down again, it means that I'm trying to just make sure that my computer is charging right, because I just got another low battery thing, so I want to make sure it's okay. But let's talk about that. Talk to me about the launch that you have coming up,
Okay.
Via, and what it is and how it can help entrepreneurs.
You got it. So in about 48 hours, we launch Via, VEA, which is the Virtual Entrepreneurs Association. It's all the tools, resources, education, discounts, and community that a small business owner needs to grow their business and potentially their virtual business, right? Because everybody wants that virtual lifestyle. Not everybody, most people do. I know I do. And the reason I created it's kind of what I alluded to earlier. When I started my business at 15, nobody would help me. I mean, they wanted to help me, but nobody was going to give me money. I did have some teachers, which was good, but I didn't have resources. I didn't have capital, and it was so hard. And the sacrifices I made were so vast. A lot of people that you'll talk to will say their best years were their teenage years. I didn't get to live my teenage years. I was growing a business at 15. Okay, I was an adult running a business, and I just thought, this is delayed gratification. If it goes right, and I was eternally optimistic as a kid. I go, this is going to go right, and I'll get to live my youth another day. And that's how I am today. Today, I'm literally like a kid every day. I can't believe it. It's literally what my life is like. But it could have gone wrong. It really could have gone wrong. Had the first venture failed, it would have taken me a decade to pay it back. Everything could have gone in a different direction. And don't get me wrong, there were ups and downs big time. But luckily, it went right. But those early years, the sacrifice was huge. I sacrificed everything. I probably would never tell you all of the sacrifices, because some of them were just horrible and embarrassing. And someday maybe I'll write a book about it when I get to the point where I think people will care enough about it, about me to hear my story. But yeah, it was so hard, and I don't wish that on anybody. And so a couple years ago, we came up with the idea for Via, and it sat on the drawing board for a while because we're just super busy. Our goal is to say no more than it is to say yes, because the phone's ringing all the time with opportunities. But we wanted to launch Via. For me, it's a give back, because I want to empower entrepreneurs to live their true life adventure, the things they really want to do. And so Via is dirt cheap. I can't even say it's inexpensive. It's dirt cheap. It's under $20 a month. Okay. And you get access to world-class education. Education for me, people pay me 15 to 30,000 a year to be in my masterminds or work with me personally. So granted, we do this on a group level, but you get access to me. You get access to 671,000 discounts on the things you need for your business and the things that you need for your personal life, all for $20 a month. The average VA member saves hundreds of dollars a month on the things they need to grow their business and live their life. So we give them world-class education. We give them access to community. We give them events all over the globe. We give them discounts, access to capital. List goes on and on. Education, access to me, interviews. And all for less than the price of a cup of coffee a week. And we have something special for your listeners where they're all going to get a free trial, so they can try it out, kick the tires, and make sure that it's as awesome as I'm saying it is. But we are completely over delivering for VIA.
Guys, and we'll make sure that will be in the episode notes here as well. And I'll also email it out to you as well if you're on my email list. You mentioned the business resources first. Just can you talk to me, give me a couple of examples of what someone might get as a couple of resources to help them with their business?
Sure. So some of the things you might need to grow your business might be like office space, or if you're a virtual entrepreneur, like a buddy of mine, this is great. So a lot of people come to my masterminds and events, and then they decide they want to be free too. So there's somebody that's in my mastermind. His name is Oliver Schmalholz, super successful guy. And a lot of these guys that come in through my masterminds, we end up venturing together. So we actually have a once quarterly VIA virtual summit, and Oliver's actually my partner on the virtual summits. He created the technology back end for it. And so Oliver and his wife, Anna, they got inspired when they came to my mastermind, and they said, we're going to get rid of everything. They sold everything, and they're traveling all over the world. So what he does is he stays at Hyatts all over the world. They live in hotels. He has a membership with WeWork. And so he always, has office space wherever he wants to go if he's not going to work in a coffee shop. One of our deals we have with Daven office space. So you can get Daven office spaces. We are working on WeWork. We're working on Regis as well. Things like, hosting, things like email platforms like Infusionsoft, Aweber, all of those. We have discounts on all of those different types of companies. And then all kinds of things you use in your everyday life. We have 500,000 hotel properties for traveling, which I use. We have 35,000 dining options. We have things like AMC movie tickets. List goes on and on. It's pretty awesome.
That's fantastic. Any what about virtual access to virtual assistants for that? Is discounts there or anything? Or
you know the story about the cobbler's shoes?
Yeah.
Well, here's the scoop. So it's funny because yes, there will be a discount on 123 inside the back office. It's the one thing we haven't put in there yet. I know we need to do it. We've got everybody else and their brother in there except 123, but by the time you see this interview, I'm sure 123 will be in the back office.
When I'm asking that question, I'm going, I definitely don't know the answer to a lot of these questions, and I definitely don't know the answer to this one. I'm like, should I be asking this question or should I not be asking that question?
No, I'm glad you did. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Good question.
One other thing, I guess, before I let you go is, and this is something that, frankly, I put a lot on myself, but I guess this is just from my own experience. You heard me say, and my audience has heard me say, and I've talked to this a lot of times where I think I had like 8 virtual assistants at one point, literally at 123 employee, and I scaled it back. And the reason I scaled it back was because I couldn't scale up anymore, right? And I was frustrated. And I had people here. I had to your point, I had 4 or 5 people here in the United States, right? So your point about sort of outsourcing is, I'm outsourcing it, but the reality is that people are getting paid here in the United States because of the success that we're having with the J. David Group, right? And so I always, and again, if you listen to this podcast, I talk about it all the time. Like now I'm a big outsourcer. I mean, at the end of the day, like the copywriters that are in Follow-Up Fuel, I found them, offshore, and some person I found onshore. Developers, like I'm the person who, like I try to live in my sort of zone of comfort and genius, which is things like this, right? Promoting and talking and just sort of building relationships and all that. But then the tedium and just sort of the toiling and that type of stuff, right, are where I get tripped up. And so I always come, and I did an episode about this where I feel like every time I get stuck, it's always about making sure my to-do list is shorter than my to-delegate list, right? I want to have a to-delegate list that's longer than my to-do list, because that's when I know that I'm really driving stuff forward and I'm getting stuff done. And every time I feel like I'm taking a step back, that's what it is. So with the virtual assistants, it was just sort of a challenge because I wasn't sure how to go beyond that. And then because frankly, they did a really good job of sourcing all of the candidates for us and putting them into my database. We had all of the people that are software salespeople in Massachusetts in my database. Like there was no more work for them to be done. So we were just emailing people straight from the database and it was perfect, right? But I guess the question is that, and as I'm building follow-up fuel, let's just say, and you talked about even sort of being an online marketer, I feel like whether you're a brick and mortar, whether you're a white collar, sort of you have office space or an internet marketer, you can always, I'm a big believer in outsourcing and in finding help for as many parts of the business as possible. How does someone like me, let's say, for instance, who's in recruiting or even as I grow follow-up fuel, sort of orchestrate all that? You're talking about the VP that you got there, right? Like that sort of is is almost like the maestro of sort of making all the systems work and all that. So some people might hire a virtual assistant and say, okay, well, okay, now she's done with this task or done with this sort of project. Now what? How do I keep this going beyond that? Like, do you have any advice there to sort of think about or?
I do. So we actually have people on staff now that are creating processes for some of our clients, which really helps a lot. So we do more of that. We have some packages that include processing out, which is nice. Also, at 123, you get a project manager that kind of oversees everything. But sometimes a way to do that is, if you're building a team, is to maybe have your own, project manager doing that so that you can focus on your genius. That certainly makes a big difference as well. Also, we created something internally for the solopreneur. We find that two things tend to happen when a solopreneur is maybe working with like one VA. Two things happen. One is they get too busy to manage, right? Guilty, sure. And two, they run out of things to give their virtual assistant, like you were just sharing. So we actually create something. It's called the Outsourcing Resource Blueprint Library. And every week, my team and I, we put together a new strategy, and we'll usually create like a mind map or a video or something like that. And we put it up every single week. So what happens is you have your standard, KPIs that you have your people work on a daily basis, and then maybe you have your evergreen tasks that they can do when they're not busy, things like social media and what have you, right? And then each week we're loading you up with new things. And so the goal is you kind of log in, learn, do, then share with your virtual assistant. But if you get too busy to manage, you just have them log in, learn, and do. And that seems to help fill up the gaps, keep your people busy, and keep your business growing.
Yeah, fantastic. And I like the fact that idea of the project manager, maybe, as part of the business, I think is huge for sure. Fantastic. The launch is 2 days away. So this will be published literally tomorrow, right? Which is July 31st, right? So it will be just in time for the launch because the launch is August 1st, right?
It's first, yeah.
Which is Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. Okay, cool. Yeah. So everybody, if you're listening to this, expect the email from me. I'm also going to put this on. I'll put it on Facebook as well, so you can go and get your free trial for VIA. And yeah, how can they find you on social media, Daven, or just to say hello and thank you and all that stuff?
Sure. So on Instagram, Daven Michaels. On Facebook, Daven Michaels. On LinkedIn, Daven Michaels. On Twitter, I guess I'm Daven Michaels on it.
There you go.
But I do spell it funny. Daven Michaels, like Davenport. So Daven Michaels, even on Instagram. Yeah, I guess on everything. That's good that I did that.
I know, it's really good. I know. You must have been early on pretty much everything. And there's not a lot of Davins either, let's just be honest. There's like a lot of Jasons. Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Daven.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.